20% of their water contracted amount. So 20% allocation is pretty low, but it's not just the farmers that are affected by this. If you look into the Mendotas, the Kalingas, and some of those communities out on the west side, on paper they're being told they're getting 70% of their historical use. And when you look at 70% of historical use, it ends up being closer to 50%. So you've got people that live in communities just like Selma who are literally being cut off by about half of their water. And so it's a pretty dire situation. We're looking at next year actually being worse. If you look at the inventory numbers in some of our storage facilities, north of the Delta and even south of the Delta, there is actually, they're not full. They're nowhere near full. And so that's our bank account of water for next year. So I worked through the appropriations process and wasn't able to get that accomplished. There was some. It's a lot more complicated of an issue than just a simple one paragraph, a line that would go into an appropriations bill. So the last few months I've been working with other members of Congress in the Valley and north of the Valley to come up with something where we'd all agree. Some of the issues that we've got with water isn't really a partisan issue. It's not a Democrat versus Republican issue. It's basically a north versus south. And you've got districts north of here who, with their water, they're getting the full amount. And they like where they're at, and we're getting the shorter amount. And if we push legislation through that would allow us to run the pumps more, they're afraid the State Water Resources Board or other bureaucrat agency would take the water from them instead of taking it from the fish with the Endangered Species Act. And so what we're trying to do is come up with some type of legislation that they feel protects them from losing their water so that we can get our share of the water as well. And to get something on paper that we all agree with, that we all understand will protect all of us is important to me. It's something that I do spend a lot of time on, but it's something that they're going to work very hard to protect their constituents. And you can't knock them for that. I would do the same in their position. And so we're going to keep working. My staff's been back in D.C. dealing with their staffs, and I've been dealing with the members directly during the break to come up with a solution on this to make sure that we do accomplish something for the long term. I know that in the past we've been able to do some things where previous members and even our Senator Feinstein has been able to do things behind the scenes working with the administration. But this year, with the amount of water that's in inventory, they're just not, that solution is not possible. So that's not an option. The option now is finding a way to preempt some state law on the Endangered Species Act and reform the Endangered Species Act at the federal level to allow us to run the pumps a little more and get that water here to the Valley. Another issue that's important to me and obviously important to the Valley is the Farm Bill. Farm Bill came up twice this past session. And I think it was June 20th that we had the complete Farm Bill the way it had been passed for 40 years. And I was a supporter of it. I'm not on the Ag Committee, but it is something that I was very involved in. It took in some language of mine that I had asked for that would allow California dairymen to be part of the federal order instead of being part of their own California system. But it also did a lot of things in there that I think were good for agriculture in general. We got a lot of government out of our process. When you've got government telling you or incentivizing certain crops or not to plant certain crops, I think it distorts the market and hurts consumers. And so it's been something that I focused a lot on to make sure that when we do work on Farm Bill policy, that the market decides what farmers plant, not the government. So that when you go to the grocery store, it's like, well, we don't have tomatoes today because there wasn't a program for tomatoes. You got corn. I mean, we've got to work on policies that actually help us get crops in the ground and grow that consumers want to buy at the store. And that's, I think, a free market deal. And then on the dairy side specifically, I was thrilled to see a lot of the programs pulled out. We got rid of MILC. We got rid of, MILC was just a milk income loss contract. We got rid of the price support program, which is basically government buying dairy products. And I think all of those were bad for the marketplace. And as a dairy guy myself, who used to spend a lot of time on the pricing side, I like seeing government out of our business. And I think it's good for my industry, and I think it's good for consumers, and it's obviously good for taxpayers. So I thought it was a good farm bill on that side, that we actually cleaned up a lot of programs. And on the row crop side, we got rid of some direct payments as well. And that was basically government writing checks to farmers for no good reason. And so getting rid of that, for me personally as a farmer, was something that I understood was bad for us on two different fronts. It was bad for us because taxpayers don't like seeing taxpayer money go to farmers. They've got higher priorities, and it was bad for the marketplace. So it was something I'm very proud to be part of, and being one of the few farmers and the only dairyman in Congress, I was able to talk about that issue pretty pretty well and help other members understand what we were doing and how we were doing it and how it would affect their constituents. That farm bill failed that day. There was obviously some issues with the vote. The funny thing about voting in Washington is a lot of members like to be on the winning side. And you'll watch the vote count because you'll have 15 minutes and the clock will run out. And as it's running out, people start adding votes. But you'll see members clicking their cards, walking back and forth. And this isn't a Republican-Democrat thing. I watch Republicans and Democrats both do it. But they'll sit there and watch, and they don't want to be on the losing side. And so there was some promises made that there were going to be some votes delivered. And when those votes weren't showing up, other people started backing off. And I remember watching friends of mine who hadn't voted yet, and it was really frustrating. I walked up to a couple of them and I said, hey guys, you got to vote. You got to put your vote on the board. Because as they watch those votes go up, when they don't see it get to the number they thought it was going to go, they start bailing to the other side. And so that day, that farm bill failed. And it was a farm bill that both had the SNAP portion and the ag portion of it. It was a complete farm bill. And on the SNAP portion, which I didn't address either, there were some adjustments made. There was some cleanup of legislation there. There's a lot of things going on. It shrunk the SNAP portion of it by about $30 billion. But it reformed a lot of the programs. It got rid of some of the programs that were bad and duplicative and just wasteful. And so the goal there was to make sure that those that need it most still have that opportunity to get it, but those who don't need it are abusing the system. And I don't know how many of you watched that news program last week. There was a guy down in San Diego that's basically living off of it. And stuff like that is just the most frustrating thing ever. Because as a member of Congress, your responsibility is to make sure that you take care of your constituents. But when you've got someone who's abusive and wasteful with the system and taking advantage of our taxpayers, you've got to jump in and say, no, this is wrong. And so our goal was to fix some of those programs to make sure that those who need it most, and who knows, any one of us could be that person that needs it someday. And if you're the person that needs it, you want it to be there to protect you. But we also want to make sure that those that don't need it aren't taking advantage of us taxpayers. So that farm bill that day that has some reforms in place did fail. About a month later, they brought up a split farm bill. I personally did not support a split farm bill, but as a policy. But I still voted for the split, the ag portion, and I am putting pressure on leadership to make sure that we pass the other half of it too. The portion of the other half, when you look at the SNAP program, if we don't reform it with legislation through the authorizing process, it'll be a fight every year forever. Instead of just saying to fund it, you want to make sure that you go in with policy and fix the issue. And that's the most important part. Is imagine your car is broken. Your car is broken, so let's not put gas in it so you don't use it. Well, that doesn't actually fix your car. You do need your car once in a while. So let's fix your car so that next time you put gas in it, it runs right. And that's why we want to make sure that we pass the SNAP portion so that those portions that are reformed and fixed, when needed, are working and can be funded to the appropriate amount. And you're not having this fight every year over funding or defunding. So we'll see what happens. I've met with leadership. I've been meeting with leadership and having a lot of conversations with them about Farm Bill coming up, or the second portion of it. And they do promise that it will come up. And talking to Frank Lucas, the chairman of the Ag Committee from Oklahoma, he promised me as well that it would come up and we would have a Farm Bill. The current Farm Bill deadlines end of September 30th. So January 1st is the first day that we would be without a Farm Bill if we don't pass something. So we are under the gun. We do not have a lot of legislative days left, but something does have to be done. And then the one issue that everybody's been hearing the most about, and I think I've been getting the most heat over, immigration. Immigration system is broke. It's been broke for a long time. And coming from the ag side, it's something that I understand well. Coming from an immigrant family, it's something that I personally understand really well. And as a member, a personal farmer, as a farmer, I've actually personally supported and helped people go through the process by sponsoring friends of mine to actually have their paperwork and to get their green cards. So it's something I've been through the process many times. It's something that I understand is broken, and it's something that I do want to be part of the solution. The Senate version that came up will not come up in the House. For those who like the Senate version, there's a lot of things in the Senate version that I do like, but it's not going to come up in the House.